Hey everyone, it's Manda here, and I'm so excited to introduce you to a great friend of mine, Kristie Ord. And Kristie's one of Australia's hottest entrepreneurs at the moment, and she's on the Gold Coast in Australia, and she's the founder of the Freedom Collective and also the Freedom Festival, which we'll have to tell you about. It's a big event that's totally transformed my life. So has my life since I met Kristie and her husband Clint a few years ago, which when I first met them, they'd actually just been at a timeshare event because they wanted some free food and a couple of food vouchers to get them through the week. So now she's like absolutely leading so many people to freedom, financial freedom and time freedom. And it's just one of the most inspirational women I've ever met. So yeah, without further ado, I'd just love Kristie, could you introduce yourself so I don't tell your story for you?
Oh, thanks so much for having me on here, Manda. It's super, super exciting to be here. So hi, everyone who is watching this. I'm going to give you a very brief snapshot of my story and kind of where I, why I'm kind of here talking about, how to create freedom in your life. So basically 8 years ago, I was a typical normal person that had gone to school, gone to university, and got the good job. And I was working in corporate, and I became super, super frustrated with that. I was super depressed. I thought that I had kind of made it. I had like a $65,000 salary. I thought that was epic, and 4 weeks off a year, and all of these things. And I was like, cool, I've made it. I was like 22, 23 at the time. I then kind of became a manager in what I was doing and all of this stuff, and very, very quickly realized that just was not the path for me, and that I felt super stuck, super trapped, super frustrated, and started getting really depressed. And then I started drinking a lot, partying a lot, basically doing anything possible to kind of take away the pain of like, what am I actually doing with my life? And I was in quite a chaotic relationship. Like nothing was really going well in my life. My health was all out of control. I put on heaps of weight, and like everything was just not flowing. And basically, one day I came across this guy who was actually Australian, and he was living in Hawaii, and he was talking about how he was making like $20,000 plus on the internet per month by having products and services. And at the time, the whole social media game was still very, very new, but he was basically able to, create this lifestyle for himself where he could do what he loved during the day, and he was basically free to do what he loved. And I was like, this guy's living my life. Like this guy is living the dream lifestyle that I have within inside of me, but I had no idea how to create that. And so I came across the book called The 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss, and that completely changed my life. It talked about this digital nomad revolution that was going on, and how there's so many people that as long as they have a laptop and smartphone, they can work on the internet. And there's people doing freelance digital marketing, there's people doing all sorts of different things, selling products, selling services, all sorts of different options to basically be able to free yourself online. And I was like, oh my God, okay, cool. Like this book confirms that, the guy that I saw that was living in Hawaii, this is the life that I want, and I want to be part of that. I want to be part of this digital economy. And so I quit my job. I broke up with my boyfriend. I quit my job. I kind of went on this mid-20s, kind of almost like rampage. And I was like, that's it. Like, I'm going to go and find out who I am. And I started to attend every personal development seminar there was. I started to read every business book, every success book that I could. I started to listen to audio. I started to, understand around proximity is power, and started surrounding myself with the right people. And I started to realize how we can actually create our dream life, and how possible it is, and how actually there's, a large portion of people that were doing that. And so I was like, well, why not me? I get to do that as well. And so I started to, one of the biggest things that I learned very early in my journey was you've got to learn to fail along the way as well. And so I started to create different businesses, and I found it quite challenging. I had an eBay store, and I lost a lot of money, and I was doing coaching, I did consulting, I did all sorts of different things. I had a traditional business, ended up having a nervous breakdown, having really bad anxiety, depression, all sorts of things. So I went through basically this 6-7 year period of like trialing all these different businesses, and yet I was still always in the same position. I was a struggling entrepreneur, and I hadn't quite found a model and a formula that would work for me. And my highest value in life is freedom. And so everything that I had been doing up until that point was not actually creating the type of freedom or excitement or fulfillment that I was looking for in my life. And so, you know, I started to get really clear on like, what would my perfect day look like? And I started to write that out, and I started to connect with that, and I started to feel into that. I started to fully visualize that. And literally now, I live that perfect day every day. I literally live in the place that I visualize. I literally, you know, I wake up next to I used to, like when I was writing out this perfect day, I'm like, I wake up next to my soulmate partner every day, and we say to each other every morning, what do we want to do today? Like, that's what we do. You know, I live in this beautiful like place by the beach in Burleigh. That's exactly where I live. Like, I started to get super, super, super clear and dialed in on all of these things that I wanted in my life and what I wanted to create. You know, things like I want to be able to take spontaneous trips and holidays whenever I want. And I've done that so many times over the last couple of years, just being like, hey, I want to go to Fiji next week, or I want to go to Bali today, literally, and like book a flight or whatever it is, like really living in that spontaneous flow of life. And this is what excites me more than anything else. Like, I have a deep passion and a deep value for freedom and to support other people to create that, because I see so many people that are stuck, and I see so many people that don't have the right tools and the right formula in order to bring all of these pieces together and actually be able to create something that's going to, you know, allow them to go out and live that day every day and be able to make a positive impact, be able to give back, be able to, you know, be fulfilled. And so it was a couple of years ago, it was about 2 years ago that I kind of cracked that code, figured out the formula, and basically, you know, was able to create this type of lifestyle for myself, and went on to create a 7-figure business, have traveled the world over the last couple of years, have, you know, been able to give back in so many ways, been able to impact thousands of people's lives across the world, been able to build my personal brands that I can, you know, keep creating and keep impacting other people's lives. And that's kind of the brief version of the very long story.
So good and so inspiring, because obviously we're, you know, talking to many people in yachting, working in the super yacht and race yacht business and expedition boats all over the world. And so personally speaking, you know, I was attracted to that industry because I felt like it gave me freedom. I've always loved sailing. My dream was always to sail around the world, and getting to do it on a rich and famous boat that, you know, and get paid for it was like the biggest dream come true. But when I was going through those same years as you, the problem was that you had this life of freedom on the boat that, you know, we absolutely love, but the cost was you wouldn't be able to get home for weddings and funerals and special occasions, or if a family member was sick. And for many of us too, it does run its course, especially as women, when we want to start having children and families. And when we have families, like, you know, if people are in yachting, the partner's away a lot, so you can't be together and wake up with your soulmate every single day. But it's a very hard thing to leave, because personally, you know, we moved back to Australia. We drove around Australia for 2 years and found ourselves back in yachting. We were lucky enough to set up our own businesses outside of it. But I guess the reason I wanted to get you on the show today was to give people some insight into how many options there are available in the world these days, especially with the whole digital economy going on. So what would you say would be the first steps you took to sort of transform your anxiety into alignment and be able to actually even think clearly enough to get started on this path?
Yeah, so when I had a nervous breakdown a couple of years ago, like, I was in the worst position of my life. Like, I had been living out of my car. I literally had all my belongings in my car, and I was like sleeping in my car, sleeping on friends' couches. Like, life was just absolutely a mess. I was scattered, and, you know, I kept getting all of these signals that I wasn't on the right path. That's what I truly believe, is like, we get signs in our life when we're not on path, when we're not in alignment. And so for me, what kept showing up was so much chaos, so much for me to look at that I wasn't actually looking at. And so what then ended up manifesting was literally, this nervous breakdown that forced me to stop. I had like stage 4 adrenal fatigue. I was completely burnt out. At the time, I owned a cafe and I was trying so hard to make that work. And there was many pieces as to why it didn't. And now I look back, I'm like, like if I'd known what I do now, like I probably could have made it work. But anyway, that was all perfect at the time. And so what literally manifested in my life was forcing me to stop and forcing me to come to a point where I literally couldn't do anything. Like I was so exhausted. I was so depleted. I had to, leave my business and basically just focus on myself. And what was really important for me in those times was getting really clear what I did want in my life and not what I didn't want. I just got super dialed in on what exactly, like if I was giving myself full permission to completely have it all and to completely live how I want to be living, not even thinking about the how, but if I give myself full permission to really get dialed in on what that looks like, what does that look like? And I gave myself permission to dream again. And I feel like that's where as adults we get stuck because we're conditioned to believe that there's like, cool, okay, we go to a job or we've got this career path or we've got that, we've got a family or we've got this. And it's like, yes, and you get to actually live the life that you desire. And not enough people are giving themselves full permission to do that. I'm writing a book at the moment and it's really literally around permission. It's around giving yourself full permission to create whatever it is that you desire. And I feel like this is one of the biggest important pieces. So number one is like, it's really clear it's really important to get clear on what you actually want in your life. Like, what are your values and are you actually living your life around those values? Like when I didn't have the type of freedom that I have now, I would feel stuck every day. I would feel trapped every day. I would feel like suffocated because the way that I was choosing to show up and the types of like work models or business models that I was choosing was not giving me that type of freedom. And so I was frustrated. I was capped, like I wasn't living this alive feeling or a fulfilled feeling in my life. And so number one is it's just really important to get clear on what, if I was giving myself full permission, ask yourself that, like if I was giving myself full permission to live the desired life that's within me, then what does that actually look like? And your dream life might look completely different to somebody else's. And it's like, cool, like mine's literally like living in this amazing penthouse in Burleigh and, doing spontaneous travel and making a large impact in the world. That's my dream life, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be yours. Yours might be that you want to be like on a property with horses and you want to do like fishing every day and you want to do awesome. Get clear on that, because what I know to be so true and what I have seen time and time again is that we really can cultivate the life around exactly how we want to live. And I truly believe, and this is something that Tim Ferriss spoke about in that book, is like create a business around your dream lifestyle, not the other way around. So, so really giving yourself full permission to actually dream, to actually go there and be like, even if I don't know the how right now, like even if I'm in a job or even if I'm in a business and I don't even understand the how element, just allow yourself to dream and visualize, because this is actually a really important part of well-being as well. Like when we, Einstein said it, like when we actually give ourselves permission to dream and to visualize and to connect to that, like this is actually a really big piece of fulfillment. And so I feel like that's like kind of the first step.
Yeah. And can I just ask one question? You said something really interesting a minute ago about you focused on what you did want, not what you didn't want. And so often we find ourselves looking at situations or being in situations thinking, I don't want this for the rest of my life, and I don't want that, and I don't want that. And we all know what we don't want. But I actually found it quite challenging because I've had quite a fortunate life, and maybe it's a first world problem. Sometimes it's nearly a bit scary to think about what you do want. But what do you think is the main problem of focusing on what you don't want?
That's what manifests. That's what we create more of. If we're like, I don't want to be stuck in traffic, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, that's what actually ends up getting manifested. So I used to focus on all the things I didn't want to be doing. I don't want to be stuck in peak hour, I don't want to do this, I don't want to have that happen. And it was like, that was the things that were showing up. When we actually take that away and just start to connect to what we do want, even if we don't understand the how, yet, then this is the path. This is what allows us to actually create more of that.
And that's where I was so lucky to find you guys, because when I found you, I was really keen to go in and do my PhD in marine medicine, and I was actually looking for a way to self-fund it. And the company I was working with didn't have a budget to pay for the marketing, so I was looking for a way to learn digital marketing to promote my business, so in adventure medicine, so I could pay for my PhD. And then when I started working with you guys, and I started learning so much about myself, and I thought, I've been going to bed every night looking at injuries, looking at illness, looking at tropical disease, and I was obsessed. My phone, was always on the phone to yachties, still am, but I deal with it in a different way, who'd broken their legs and ripped earrings out, or were having heart attacks in weird places. And I was so obsessed with this, trying to serve the world, that I was creating, those injuries in my life. And I'm still learning about that, by the way, but it really, I got to see that firsthand and say, look what I'm creating, and take ownership for it, and sometimes it doesn't mean I don't have to have any interest in health and medicine, but it showed me that maybe I stop looking at injuries after 6 o'clock at night and go back to focusing on happy things and nice things and beaches and kite surfing and stuff I love, So yeah, thanks for sharing that, because I think a lot of people just don't realize what they're doing when they're not thinking consciously, and when they're having these thoughts of, I don't want that and I don't want that. What's another step? Could you give me a couple of your secrets to success? Because in 2 years, I've seen you transform. Your vibe, the way you show up, the way you look after yourself, it's just so inspiring. And for so many people that are going through burnout at the moment, and anxiety and feeling stuck, just Kristie is such a great testimonial to how you can make a couple of decisions and really shift your life. So could you give us a couple more pearls of wisdom on your secrets of success?
Totally. I believe one of the biggest pieces is creating a really awesome relationship with money and understanding money. For me, I was always very stuck around money. I could not get past $1,000 in my bank account. I had huge upper limits, huge self-sabotage when it came to money. And that was also a big piece as to why, other things didn't work for me, and when I actually started to create this awesome relationship with money, and I started to actually work on my self-worth and what I was worthy of receiving, because at the time my worthiness levels was, okay, I can receive, $1,000 at a time, but my bank account, if it goes over 1,000, it's just going to kind of go out to bills and go out. It just left my account straight away. So something that we always teach everybody, and it might sound really silly to some people, but it totally works, is we have this mantra of I love money and money loves me. And we started doing this in our life. We started literally we would be how are we going to pay rent the next day? And this was when we were going from this place of scarcity to abundance, because there's a piece there, right? Of moving into that next level version of yourself. And so we were playing in these fields, we were kind of these people that were in between at that time. We're cool, how are we going to pay rent tomorrow? And then we would, work on our money stuff. We would literally because the thing is our vibe attracts everything. Our vibe attracts our money. Our vibe attracts our tribe. Our vibration is such a big key thing. And when we pour love onto money, for example, then money can amplify. And when we pour love onto another human being, that friendship and connection can amplify. If we're rude and we talk behind their back and we gossip about them, or we say negative stuff about someone, is that relationship going to amplify? No. And that's the same with money. If our language around money is that money's hard to come by, or I can't afford this, or I can't do this because of money, and money's that thing and block, then there gets to be a really beautiful relationship that's built with money. And so for me, I started to really focus on that. I really truly believe whatever areas are out of balance in our life, like what's the priority? And for me, you know, the priority for me was to get myself out of this funk of like what I was actually worthy of receiving and having. And so I started to get really clear, like I truly believe in like incantations and affirmations and like really like what is it that you're calling in? Because again, we can focus on what we don't want, but if we focus on what we do want in that moment that we are that person, that's when things can amplify. So started doing things like, you know, that my mantra, my thing was, I love money and money loves me. I love money and money loves me. I would, you know, every day I would be writing out things like, you know, I am a money-making machine and I impact, you know, the more impact that I create, the more money I receive. I'm worthy of receiving, you know, millions of dollars and keeping money. I'm worthy of this, worthy of that. Like I just started to really get into this vibration of like what I was calling into my life and for that to be true. And so I really truly believe that like money and vibration work is super, super important. Other stuff is like really starting to become the higher version of you. And this was one key piece that changed so much for me. When I started to get real with myself of like how I was showing up until that point, I was like, actually, I'm not living my dream life. I'm not creating what I desire. I'm not making the impact that I want. I'm not that fulfilled. And so I was like, well, how would that version of me show up? And so I started to look at, like, say I wanted to create a 7-figure business. I was like, well, at the moment, I don't have a 7-figure business, but to bridge the gap between the 7-figure version of myself and where I was currently at, I needed to become that person first. And so I started to ask myself things like, well, what action steps would I be taking if I was actually embodying the 7-figure version of myself or the highest version of myself? What behaviors would I, you know, how would I be behaving? How would I be showing up? You know, what decisions would I be making? When I have to make a decision about like something financially or a business or something like that, like how would I respond? How would I respond to challenges in my life? So basically I started to become that person, and I started to, before I had the 7-figure business, I started to actually become that person. And when you become the person first, that's when the money will amplify. That's when the business will amplify, because people are attracted to people that are of a high vibration, right? And so I started to really look at, you know, how do I become that version of myself? And I started to become that version of myself. And very quickly, abundance literally started to rapidly accelerate in my life.
So is that kind of like fake it till you make it? To me, it sounds a little different. You know, I think fake it till you make it is sometimes people making false claims and acting as if they, you know, I don't know. Is it the same or is it slightly different?
No, it's not at all. I totally don't believe in faking it till you make it. Some people, some coaches, some business people tell you to fake it till you make it. It's not about that. It's about you becoming that person. So like for me, I looked at, okay, if I was showing up as the highest version of myself, the one that was playing full out in my life, the one that was playing a big game, how would that version be showing up? And I was like, okay, that person would have like, you know, some kind of routine. And I definitely don't have a perfect daily routine. Like I have a 2-year-old, you know, I'm not one of those people that has like this strict thing. However, there are things, non-negotiables in my life. Like I read, and that's a non-negotiable in my life. I listen to audios, that's a non-negotiable in my life. I make sure that I do some form of exercise every day. That's a non-negotiable in my life. Now, these things weren't a non-negotiable beforehand. And so I started to look at what are some of the habits and rituals that I can start to adopt in my life, some positive habits and rituals that I can adopt that can accelerate that process. And every successful person I've spoken to, I mean, they have rituals, they have habits that become non-negotiables in their life. So for me, I was like, at the time, I was kind of like getting out of bed really late. I was in a funk during the day. I was like, you know, I was allowing myself to kind of be in this space of messiness. And then I was like, hang on, if I want to show up as the highest version of myself and call in what I desire, then how does that person show up? And it was like, it was literally looking at my behaviors and actions. It wasn't like, oh my God, my life is so great, and like posting that all over the internet. It was like, no, like I get to make these internal shifts. I get to make these really powerful shifts in terms of habits and rituals in my life that will literally affect everything around me. And when we do make these powerful habits and rituals and changes in our life, it does affect everything. It affects our mood. It affects our emotions. It affects how we show up. It affects our productivity. It affects our performance. It affects everything that we do. And so it's about finding that for yourself. You know, what's that highest version of you? And maybe you don't even connect with those words of highest version, but whatever, what is the version of you that's committed to creating the life of your dreams? How is that person showing up? Because you have to embody that stuff first and start doing that stuff first and becoming that person first in order for the other stuff to flow.
So that is so amazing. But just one thing I'd like to ask is, a lot of people listening and watching today are working on boats. They're super busy. You know, so a lot of my coaching clients are even struggling to show up for calls at the moment because they thought that their season would end and they'd have some downtime. But, you know, it's just go, go, go. They're preparing to get to the Caribbean and they're tearing their boats apart. It's so high stress at the moment. And a thing I hear all the time is, I don't have time. I just don't have time, Amanda, to have a morning routine. So if you only had 10 minutes in the morning because you really needed as much sleep as you could get, what would be something you could do in that 10 minutes that could be massively transformational?
Well, I'm a speed reader. I don't know how fast other people read, but I would read like 5 to 10 pages of a book.
Okay, cool.
Book that actually is around success, and it depends, like, what's your priority in your life? You know, if your priority in your life is to not be working on yachts, I'm not exactly sure what the priority is, but whatever the priority is in your life, then then you need to go all in on that area. And sometimes it's a sacrifice. I mean, when I was building my business, I had to say no to things, and I understand, like, work can be really busy and we're tired and we need to I get it. I fully understand. And we also, like, during those times of changing our life and transforming our life, yes, they're some of the can be some of the hardest moments, because we're having to add things into our life in order for something to change, or we're having to take things away in order for something to change. So for me, like, I had to be really discerning around my time. And I understand when people have jobs, etc. But I had to be super, super clear and look at, well, where am I spending my time? Like, okay, say for someone in a job, where are you spending your time outside of that? And, you know, oftentimes people are like scrolling Facebook, or they're watching Netflix, or doing things to shut off. And I get that, but it's like, but what's your priority? And what is your priority? And it's like, when we can understand and some things just aren't a priority for some people. Like, some people just don't have that priority in their life at that moment. But it's like, if you do have a priority to create your dream life, and that's why, you know, you obviously got me on here today, is to talk about this stuff. Like, that's what I'm super passionate about, is like supporting people to understand how to do that. But if that is your priority, then you need to look at, well, what can you start saying no to outside of those hours, and what can you start to add in that is going to support that vision to unfold. And it could just be 10 minutes a day. It could be half an hour a day. But doing these small little actions and habits and rituals with the time that we do have available, that starts to compound and make such a positive difference in our life.
So important. And so we've talked about the word freedom a lot, but I feel that everyone has a different version of freedom. So what does freedom actually mean to you?
So I see freedom as ultimate freedom. I see that as full expression. I see it as time freedom. I see it as financial freedom. I see it as emotional freedom. I see it as health freedom. I see us as being these free beings where we get to do whatever we want, whenever we want. We get to give to whoever we want. We get to, if we wake up one day and we're like, you know what, I'm not doing anything today. Cool, don't do anything today. If we want to, like, freaking change the world and impact the world today, awesome, do that. It's about having choice, and it's about and I also truly believe as well, like, health is such a big part of that. Like, we cannot, it doesn't matter how much financial freedom, time freedom we have, if we don't have health and well-being freedom and mindset freedom, then we're not going to feel fulfilled anyway. We're not going to be able to feel alive. And so there's so many pieces into freedom. Like, some people think, oh, if I just had all the money, then my life would be amazing. Well, money's great, but if you're feeling like crap every day and your mindset's not on point and all of this kind of stuff, then you're not living a life of freedom. And so I really feel that freedom is this beautiful element of wholesomeness, where we get to wake up, do what we want. We get to be fully expressed. We get to stand in our truth. We get to stand in our beliefs. We get to be surrounded by incredible like-minded people. We get to, have the time, have the capacity to be like, if a friend's sick or if somebody is in need, we get to give to that person. Like, just choice and freedom, and having all of these ultimate pieces that come into that, where we're creating that wholesome life for ourselves.
Thank you. That's the most beautiful description ever. Which brings me to my next question. So in a couple of months in 2020, you're putting on another Freedom Festival. The first one I went to, I think there was like 300 people. I think I witnessed about 300 tickets being sold in the first 5 minutes when this was launched. So can you tell us a bit about the Freedom Fest Global and what to expect and how it started and what the vision with that is?
Yeah, for sure. So Freedom Fest is really a transformational weekend. It's a 4-day event. We have different packages. So some people come for 4 days, some people come for 3 days. And it really is that piece and that element of looking at ultimate freedom in your life. And so, we really bring in very, very professional keynote speakers that really fit into that element of living a freedom lifestyle. And so for us, it's all those different areas. It's like, how do you be the fullest expression of who you are? And how do you actually speak your truth? And how do you do all of those things? How do you create financial freedom and wealth in your life? How do you have, all those pieces of freedom where life's juicy, life's alive. Life is like, you wake up and you're like so grateful to be alive. And so we created this. We actually got like this vision and idea to create something that, because I was so tired of going to events that were kind of boring, and I was like, we need to create something fun so that people actually transform and have radical shifts, and yet they're having so much fun at the same time. And so we've brought all of these elements together where people get to like literally transform the things that they don't know. Like, the big area is like highlighting what you don't know. And when we can highlight the stuff that we don't know about ourselves and how we're actually showing up, that's when we can make radical change, and it can actually literally start to shift in our entire system straight away. And so we're deeply about transformation. We're also very much about creating business online, because that is the way of the future. And as long as we have a laptop and smartphone and we understand the formula, then we can basically be creating a business where it works for us. It works on autopilot for us. And so that is our target market of like people that are interested in creating digital enterprises. And then we have, so many pieces in there. So each year we have a theme. Last year it was unleashing your fully expressed self. This year it's about becoming the millionaire version of you. And so the themes and the speakers that we weave into all of that are in alignment with those pieces. And so very much what this year is about is that millionaire you version of you. And the 5 key pillars around that are like, how do you embody love, leadership, ultimate freedom, wealth, and impact. And we truly believe that like the leaders of the future, like the world leaders of the future, have those five pillars. And that's where like that fulfillment is going to come from.
Amazing. And so on that note, you're the mother, I guess, of your Freedom Collective. And it's one of the most amazing online spaces I've ever been involved with. Well, it's not really online. It's, I've actually met some of my best friends that way. You created the most incredible community that goes well beyond just, showing up for a training once a week. It's just like this gigantic family that's just so supportive and inspiring. But what can people expect if they were interested in joining your Freedom Collective?
We teach so much. Like we really give people the foundational steps to actually build a business online and something that's going to thrive. And we teach them how to become the fullest version of themselves. We have, courses in there around money mindset, around, vibrational work, around energy work, around personal branding. We see personal branding as a digital long-term asset that we can build for ourselves. And as long as we have the right irresistible offers connected to that, we can literally have these things running on autopilot for us. And so we really teach this way of the future of digital economy. And all the pieces that come into that, because what we truly believe as well is that it's not just about having the right strategy. The strategy is epic, and when you've got the right strategy, that's when so much can explode. But it's also about the internal work, and we truly believe that success comes down to 80% of what's going on within and 20% of the strategy. And so we teach both these elements, and we have this amazing culture and community of incredible people that totally understand about proximity is power, and that when we're around the right communities of people that are actually going for their dreams, that are actually creating a positive life for themselves, that are actually deeply, deeply grateful, that are working on themselves, that are growing, that these are the type of people that light our soul up when we spend time with them. And so it's such a beautiful element and mix of all of these things.
So good. And on that note, if anyone would like to find out more, I'm actually launching a subgroup of that, and I'll be doing a webinar tomorrow. So if anyone's keen, you can jump on and find out more information from me. And if it's okay with you, Kristie, if people want to find you and follow you and be inspired, I'll put your details down below so they can keep an eye on your social media page and any events that's coming up, because I highly recommend the Freedom Festival. I highly recommend joining the Freedom Collective and just, yeah, following Kristie. She's such an inspiration, and I'm so honoured to have you in my life, mate. It's just awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure being on here and giving everyone value. And yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
No worries. And for those of you that for some reason can't get to Australia, hopefully we'll have a Freedom Festival in Europe and the Caribbean soon as well. So put it out there. Just putting it out there. Awesome. All right. Thanks so much for your time. You're amazing. And thanks everyone for watching.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yay. Okay, I'm Manda J, and you've been listening to Yachting Interact National Radio. Thanks again. See you all soon. Bye.